Okay, after the first very demanding but very hugely rewarding day yesterday, we can start our day, the last day of the conference. We have the second plenary panel with 4 papers. I would like to ask the speakers to stick to the 15-minute limit so that we have time for discussion, to devote to discussion. We have 4 papers. The first one by Emilia Palonen, from the University of Helsinki, Rhetoric-Performative Analysis. The second one by Lasse Thomassen from Queen Mary, University of London, Laclau as a Theories of Representation, Populism and Universality. The third one by George Katambekis from Loughborough, Are the People of Populism Necessarily Homogeneous, Virtuous and Pure? A Critique of Mainstream Approaches from a Discursive Standpoint. And the fourth one by Alan Dreyer Hansen, Marianne Hoy-Lisberg from Roskilde, when we had another very interesting meeting a few years ago, I remember. It was slightly like that. This meeting reminded me of the Roskilde meeting of Discourse theory people. The title is We the People, on the construction of the French and Danish people, an analysis of the public debates in France and Denmark after the terror attacks of January and February 2015. So we'll have the 4 papers, stick to the 15 minutes limit, and then we'll go back to the discussion.
Thank you, Yanis. It's a great honor to be here. Thanks for the organizers. I mean, I talked already yesterday, so it's great. So, I'm talking about rhetoric-performative analysis and populism. I thought, okay, maybe we should just talk about populism as well. And presenting some of my ideas about this topic that I've been working on for a long time. When I started working on Hungarian street names and memorials back in the 2000s, I didn't realize that I would be also working on populism later. So I worked on, wrote something about populism, this populist logic and bipolar confrontation and bipolar hegemony, basically anti-populism divide. But then I also stopped writing about populism because I was told that what I'm talking about is not populism. So of the right, although in Hungary it was really difficult because left and right are not that as easy to talk about. But and it was somehow not really the issues that we wanted to consider as populism. So I moved on to many other things, but in the end ended up going back to populism and actually then calling it populism as well and not something else as I was writing about it. And we published this book just a year ago, Jatkat and Jytkyt, about the Finnish party and populism in Finland. Also the left and right are not that simple, so in some ways you could understand that that the Finnish party would be having its origins on the left and really mobilizing. But that book also introduced to the Finnish audience this rhetoric-performative analysis as we've been shaping it on the basis of discourse theory, performativity, some intersectional analysis with my co-author Tuija Saresma. But it's based on this idea that actually we shouldn't be studying discourses, but meaning making. And this is what I've been teaching in Helsinki from 2006. That kind of analysis enables us to deal with some forms of agency and some sort of like who are the meaning makers. Because Alan here, for instance, was asking me when I was writing my PhD, like, how can you talk about the discourse of the mayor? That makes no sense. So probably it didn't make sense, so I moved on to study something else, like meaning making. That's the core of theory of hegemony. And that enabled me to also go back to these theorists and analysts like Quentin Skinner, and looking at like how these meanings are actually initiated, transformed, and changed by these kind of organic intellectuals or innovative ideologies. So it's not just about speech and writing. It's about the performance. It's about meaning making through other means. Performativity brings affects to the core. Of course, it's always there in discourse theory for us, but for many people, if you talk about discourse, they kind of forget about this dimension. It's also about where this performance takes place, and this is something that I want to be exploring more in the future, like looking at the kind of spatialities where this, I mean, the concrete physical appearances of where populism is taking place, where meaning making takes place in the contemporary era, and also how it takes place. So what would be, so you can still be talking about the discursive shifts, discursivity, but I really got to know it having a lot of students who just wanted to study discourse, and they came to me with their papers. I found a discourse, and I'm good for you. Maybe you want to tell us what it says about anything, and then this approach also enables us to look at the macro, move from the macro structures of meaning to micro level, micro instances, and their sort of significance. And for me, this comes up later in this paper. It's about a proper anti-essentialism. We heard a paper yesterday that was accusing Laclau and Mufabad of essentialism, Rhetoric-Performative, and this was interesting because I also think that we should do imminent reading and be more anti-essentialist in terms of Laclau and Mouffe, and I think it exists there. So this paper investigates completely different things than the abstract on the website, sorry. But this is what it, I replaced these things. So formula of populism and so on. So I'm arguing that we have to take Michael Frieden's point about the reminder that it is really an empty ideology. Populism is an empty chord, and that's what it is. So at its core, there is this emptiness. There is a always fillable emptiness. So as populism is an articulation and logic, and we can see that its content cannot be people versus the elite. So the form becomes the content of populism. So this is what I've been talking about and writing about recently, that logically you can reduce populism into this following formula. Populism equals us, which is heightened always by affects, plus a frontier, which is heightened by potentially another form of affects. What we should be analyzing, in my perspective, is what these us's would be, what is filled with us, what is filling us, what are the different things, perhaps heterogeneity, different forms of things that could be falling onto us. Where does it then perhaps crystallize? And then what would be the things outside the frontier, the other side of the frontier, on the frontier, that would be mentioned? And how these different forms of affects would be, what would be the affects that would be there? And in our projects, currently we actually, in a WINO project, World of Knowledge, we are looking at these affects and emotions. We are finding out what polarizes in Europe just before the Euro elections. We're doing a big data analysis of tweets. If anybody wants to join in this, please let me know. And then we are also later on looking at the exact emotions that are being provoked by this. This is, of course, different, but some of us want to be doing experimental research on finding out those exact emotions. Well, obviously, I'm more interested in this built environment and meaning making through symbols, etc. Here, you have pictures of from Budapest, the so-called German occupation memorial and living memorial on this other side of the street. That is, they are only building that memorial, official memorial, at the time of my picture taking 2014. And then on this other side of the street, there are people looking at the memento, these kind of precious items that have been put there to remind about the actuality of that event, Holocaust, in Hungary. And that still exists. And I've been writing about it in these couple of papers. But also, like, how does this, in this case, we can see how top-down and bottom-up processes that are generating hegemony, counter-hegemony are there. Obviously, then going back to this logical thinking, this would be the reduction of this article that I wrote in 2009 and my PhD thesis on bipolar hegemony. So, but in Hungary, in the case of Hungary, you can't really say that there would be like already, like, it's only mobilizing at the moment, this sort of left opposition, or what is left opposition, like what is left if you are not from Fidesz, kind of an opposition against it. This part of the presentation that we are moving on now is looking at populism as a form of representation. And that deals with the empty space of power that Claude Lefort talked about, and that is actually taken up by several colleagues when they have been writing about populism. Nadia Urbinati is one of them, Jan Werner Müller, and Ernst Laclau, of course. So this MC core, empty space of power, as is a key. I'm trying not to talk about too much of that, but this is taking me to the sort of a binary concept that I've articulated. It's just a heuristic device, of course, of democracy and demography. And it centers around this question of who are us, the people. So we can understand people from different perspectives. People as fiction, people as myth, and people as praxis. And these three approaches would be summarized more or less. There's a paper on this, and I can upload it later on the website. Find out how. And there's Jan Werner Müller, who takes this what I call demographic understanding. It's an anti-hegemonic understanding of democracy, or where I mean, he's doing kind of the same thing as Johannes did yesterday in this panel on gender, where he's like raising up, okay, well, there are these and these and these kinds of women, and all of them have different kinds of problems in the academia. So it's like demarcating into different kinds of socio-economic groups with different kinds of characteristics, these different people. So it's more or less like an apartheid logic that Aletta Novel talked about in her thesis. So it's breaking up society into these different sections and ruling through that. And then there's the point about people as a myth that is emerging in Margaret Canavan's book that I'm using there in 2005. There, and then people as praxis from Laclau. Do I have to explain that? You can ask about it more. But I'm kind of getting there. So how does the people become us is the key question. Where and how in this new conjuncture for populism and democracy. Chantal wrote in her book about this. This is the populist moment. Now we are in this conjuncture, and I'm agreeing that we are in a conjuncture, but it's not necessarily a conjuncture for left populism. It is just a different conjuncture where we have hybrid media and these kinds of like different ways in which we can be situating ourselves and making meaning. So we are becoming people through these articulations, and also we could be discussing this more, but that we are always with theory of hegemony and a sort of democratic understanding of the people instead of demographic one. We are dealing with this impossibility, unity, and fluidity. So you would always have to keep the articulations fluid, but not too fluid. And this is alongside like heterogeneity, homogeneity, maybe this is a different articulation of that, the key question in populism research and praxis today. Just to finish off, I'm supposed to be keeping a couple of minutes shorter. This is our Helsinki hub where we discuss and think these kinds of issues. There's a book that actually came from Jyväskylä, Populism Under Loose, that's findable online. I mean, you can just download it if you don't want to. There's Urpo Kovala, myself, Maria Ruotsalainen, and Tuija Sarasma, who've been writing this. Urpo and actually all of them, Tuija as well, and Maria, are joining our team of mainstreaming populism that Juha Herkman is leading there. He's been writing about Nordic populism from Laclau perspective. And then we have this new World of Knowledge Wino team as well, where we discuss precisely the social media aspects of that, the meaning making in this kind of a world of knowledge that sort of generates new forms of hegemony by molding together different kinds of insights. Yes. We also have these 2 summer school courses this year. We've been having them before as well. Now we named the Populism Under Loose course that Virke Salojärvi is leading, and with speakers from outside as well. And we focus only on Erestos theory. We hope to get more people joining that summer school, both as teachers and as students. And then the Rhetoric-Performative post-foundational analysis. So where we have Thomas Marttila, for instance. Thomas has been contributing from the beginning, and of course there's several people who wrote to his book, where also some of like more systematic presentation of what this method is explained. Okay. Thanks.